Thank you. There's that dreadful joke, isn't there, about the husband and wife, and they decide that they needed something from the local DIY shop, so the husband merrily goes off to order something from the DIY shop, and on the radio his wife hears that there's a catastrophe on the motorway because somebody's driving down the wrong side of the motorway, so she rings her husband and says, "Be careful, there's some idiot driving down the wrong side of the motorway." And he said, "Hell, there's not one idiot, there's hundreds of them." And the reason I mention that is because I've been involved in bursaries for a very, very, very long time. I was a bursary recipient in 1973 to the wonderful Bloxham School. In 2004 I took over a boarding school as the head of a boarding school in beautiful mid-Devon that had at its core foundationers from the Peter Blundell will, and in 2012 I and a number of other colleagues started what was then called the Springboard Bursary Foundation, which a year ago, almost to the day, merged with the Royal National Children's Foundation to create the implausibly long-named Royal National Children's Springboard Foundation, and most often I forget how to say that name, which is slightly embarrassing as the CEO. There's a long track record within charity of looking after or helping place vulnerable children both in care and on the edge of care. It breaks down quite nicely for us as a structure at the moment, and that is the legacy RNCF children had a long and experienced track record of vulnerable children on the edge of care, principally led, I think, in various brushes by Colin with the Assisted Boarding Network, and before that with the Pathfinder scheme, and Chris Hughes, who sat here as well. And Springboard 6 years ago took a decision, really from a meeting I had with Andrew Carroll, that we would actively support looked after children in boarding schools, and we built a very strong model related to that, and most of you will know us through one or two of those connections, and I know most virtual heads in the room. So we feel we do have quite a lot of experience, but from relatively few children. It's important to stress that. We've got 500 110% children in over 100 and something boarding schools as we sit here. Relatively few of those are either vulnerable children on the edge of care or looked after children, but that doesn't matter because we've developed a lot of experience and expertise. And as with all good CEOs or managing directors, I'm getting somebody else to talk about that particular program, because in fact Alexander Hanratty, who's my deputy CEO, has really kind of led on that particular project. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Alex.
Thank you, Ian. Okay, I'm mindful of time, so please bear with me. I have 10 minutes, and I'm going to really draw upon some of the key case studies, so what we've learnt, what we feel has gone particularly well, and where some of the challenges have been, and how we've moved on and learnt from that. So firstly, as you all know, children in care are the most disadvantaged group of young people in the UK, and we are passionate about doing what we can to support them. In the last 5 years, approximately 40 local authorities in England have engaged with us, 5 of which have placed 15 children in care from years 7 to 11 in 6 different state and independent boarding schools. With the retention of 85%, we feel our model is robust and successful, but yet we are still continually learning. Pioneered by the excellent work happening between East Sussex County Council and Beeds Boarding School, we've now rolled out the scheme nationwide. I should add here that a lot of what I drew together for this presentation has actually already been included in the excellent work that's happening in Norfolk, which is really encouraging to see. So I won't repeat that in this presentation. And I should also add here that the scheme, as important and as passionate as we are about it, is complex and needs careful consideration and planning. So I thought I'd start with a couple of case studies where it's worked particularly well. Case study A was recommended to us by one of our local authority partners when she was in year 11. She was placed at boarding school within the local authority for sixth form and did very well, achieving 2 A's and a B at A level. She's now at her first choice university, where she averaged a 2-1 after her first year. When asked in her Royal Springboard alumni survey what she would be doing had she not gone to boarding school, she said she would be working in the local shop. Case study B was recommended by one of our local authority partners when she was in year 8. She was placed at boarding school within the local authority at year 9, did very well, achieving 8 GCSEs A star to C, 4 of which were A star and A. She is now in her final year of boarding school and has applied to Russell Group universities. She contributes widely to the life of the school and particularly excels in drama. Both case studies A and B have come through the same strong partnership. And why do we feel and what has worked particularly well here? Firstly, the partnership between the local authority and the host boarding school is very strong and built on trust. The boarding school has employed an exceptional looked after child coordinator who oversees the scheme and who sits on the governing body of the virtual school. Both the head of the boarding school and the head of the virtual school are hugely committed to the scheme, and this has led to the local authority and boarding school becoming mutually strong, compatible partners. We have learnt that what is needed for a partnership to work well is that the boarding school and local authority ideally need to build trust and understanding before any placement is considered. This should include belief in the concept that those professionals involved with the scheme agree that placing looked after children into boarding school is the right thing to do, the ability to drive it forward and make it happen, so having a designated lead, looked after child coordinator at the boarding school and at the local authority to oversee the scheme, trust in each party to play their part, and an agreed flexible approach based on the needs of the child. I'll give you one example here. One of our looked after children we supported had a foster placement breakdown when she was at boarding school. She ended up in supported lodgings. The boarding school worked consistently hard to ensure that she made it through to the end of her schooling career with the local authority and with the pupil. She finished and got 3 A-levels. And also what's worth saying is that it's not just the academic achievement here, something that we've talked about earlier today. Whilst at boarding school, she also played drums in the house band, she coached volleyball, she represented the school in football, she was captain of their school's target rifle shooting team, and she's now doing an apprenticeship and has aspirations to go to university later on. She's a prime example of the holistic benefits and life-transforming impact of boarding school, and we're hugely proud of her. We've also learned that looked after children must be suitable for boarding. So as again alluded to earlier, pupils with long-term significant behavioural difficulties may not be suitable for boarding school, particularly if they're placed at a mainstream school. Academic assessments should ensure that the pupil can cope with the academic pace at the selected boarding school, and we work with a range of boarding schools for this reason. Effective planning and preparation is critical and should start 12 to 15 months before the young person starts. There also needs to be transparent and effective communication every step of the way, not only between the local authority and the boarding school, but also within the boarding school and local authority. Once the pupil starts at boarding school, we feel it is best practice for the subject teachers to be informed that the pupil is a looked after child. House parents, tutor and the boarding school lead or looked after coordinator communicates regularly with the foster carer and social worker, and the pupils offer the opportunity to see the counsellor. With regards to holidays, we feel it is really important that the pupil can return home to the foster carer's home, where they have their own room and can leave belongings whilst they are at school. Now, we are well aware of the national challenges in recruiting foster carers and feel one viable solution is for the local authority to actively market fostering to those potential foster carers who are already in employment and might be willing to care for a child but cannot commit 24/7. We are sure that there are some potential foster carers out there who may be willing to be part-time foster carers on a reduced income. Of course, the vulnerabilities associated with looked after children means that this is complex work and not always a success. Our job is to mitigate the risk of failure as much as we can and use our learning to improve the success of future placements. The following 2 case studies demonstrate mixed results. Case study C was placed at a boarding school in the neighbouring local authority. She experienced extreme highs and lows during her time at boarding school. She has a solid group of friends, but struggled with the academic pace. She has also struggled with the anxiety of where she would live once she left boarding school, although she had been reassured that her foster placement would remain open once she attended university. Case study D was recommended to us just 4 months before he was due to start at boarding school, when he was about to start his GCSE exams. It was felt that case study D had the intelligence and the academic potential to make a success of the placement. After some minor issues in the first few weeks, he settled and made some friends. However, he struggled with the academic pace and started to push the boundaries. Further to this, his grandparents were not supportive of the placement. He eventually left after 2 terms and has returned to live with his grandparents and attend the local college. He still has aspirations to go to university. In both cases, we felt that not enough time was spent in developing the partnership between the local authority and host boarding school, nor in preparing the pupils for boarding before they started, even though the desire was there to make it work from the local authority boarding school and our charity. Despite both pupils being matched to schools at which we all collectively felt they had the cognitive ability to thrive, the academic pressure and pace were too much for both pupils, particularly case study D, so perhaps we could have done more preparation there. Both of these pupils would have benefited from starting at boarding school before year 12. We feel that they should actually have started at an earlier age. This would have allowed more time to get used to the rhythms of the school, build friendships and trust in key adults, as well as get used to the academic pace before their A-levels started. This is also endorsed by a pioneering piece of research we have piloted this year with an organisation called STEER, which assesses children's mental well-being and self-regulation, and results of which will be disseminated later this summer. Now, I should add here, because I know that we've spoken about some year 12 placements, that I know Norfolk and Wyndham and so on have considered that, and absolutely, for the right child, it is the right thing to do at year 12. But of course, from our experience, we've learned that it is more fragile placement because they've got 2 years rather than 5 or 7 to get used to the rhythms of the school, manage the transition from day to boarding, often state to independent, but not always, and of course, GCSE to A-level jump, which is huge. And then they've got to make friends, leave their home community, and so on. The grandparents of case study D were also not fully on board and unfortunately brought into negative stereotypes, negative boarding school stereotypes which were fed back to the pupil. And finally, despite matching pupils to the school we all collectively felt was suitable for them, they were placed out of the local authority. One was in the neighbouring local authority and one was a little bit further away, which added additional complexities. So in summary, what have we learnt and what questions should we ask at the start and for future development? The partnership between the host boarding school and the local authority should be explored and developed first. Are the two cultures mutually compatible? Can the virtual school and social care team see those looked after children thrive at that particular boarding school? What needs to be put in place to ensure an effective and smooth transition and integration into boarding school for looked after children? What mechanisms need to be put in place to safeguard the child's needs if things go wrong from the start? How can communication be shared effectively? Once the pupil has been identified, has the information regarding the pastoral and academic needs, pupil's history and motivation to attend boarding school been shared effectively and openly with the host boarding school, and sensitively too? Has the risk assessment critically been conducted in light of the pupil's history? How can the local authority and boarding school reassure themselves that enough due diligence has been conducted so that this placement is a success and won't lead to the pupil feeling rejected? Planning and preparation. Has enough time been set aside to ensure checks can be put into place so the placement is a success? Are boarding school staff prepared and trained in how to support young people with attachment and trauma-related issues? The virtual school team, the local authority, may be able to assist with this training, so do ask them. And has an extended stay at the boarding school for the pupil been set up so the pupil can have a real feel for boarding before they start? What we have learned as a charity and what we continue to learn, and what I've mentioned here, we have put into a best practice handbook. Please do get in touch if you'd like to see that, and I can of course share that with you. Finally, I thought I would leave you with 2 quotes. The first of which is from the virtual school head at East Sussex, a local authority from which we have learnt so much and are very much inspired. For a small number of children looked after, boarding school is an excellent option and opportunity. East Sussex has worked closely with Springboard and in particular Bede School to create an opportunity for young people at the start of year 7, 9 and 12. It certainly works best when the whole team supporting the young person is involved in early identification and supportive of the opportunity. Bede's has an identified designated teacher for children looked after and an ethos which is very attachment aware. This, coupled with the support from Springboard, has resulted in 100% success for our young people. And the following quote is from the excellent Looked After Child coordinator at Bede's, Dr. Andrew Carroll himself, who's been doing inspirational pioneering work in this field. He says, "We cannot overstate the impact that a boarding education has had on our young people in care. It has opened their eyes to their own potential and provided them with opportunities to explore and develop their individual talents. We have repeatedly seen our children in care grow in confidence and self-belief, try new activities, develop social skills, and make connections and lasting friendships with pupils from all over the world. Our commitment to the long-term education of each child, our language of expectation and aspiration, and the wraparound pastoral care we provide has enabled each child to see their rightful place in our community. We have an open, strong and mutually supportive relationship with Springboard and our local authority partners. Indeed, there is an expectation that foster carers, social workers and virtual school caseworkers share their experience and understanding of the child and engage with the school on all levels. This has been crucial to the success of the placement. The stability that boarding provides also supports a strong foster placement, a strong, stable foster placement, which in turn allows the child to focus their energy on their studies and extracurricular activities and simply flourish." Thank you for listening.